Hi, fellow YouTubers out there. Tony Spera again from the Warren's Occult Museum here in Connecticut. I'm actually sitting in Ed's office in his old original chair. Today is May 8th or 9th. I can't remember now. Well, it's Friday. And I'm here to talk a little bit about the movies, about the Conjuring movies, the Annabelle movies. As you can see behind me, there's a big poster of Annabelle Comes Home that Warner Brothers gave to us when they came out here. I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that it was a dream come true for Lorraine, for Judy, and for me to see this happen, to see these movies being made. It's just sad that Ed Warren wasn't around at that time to see it happen. He had already passed in August 23rd of 2006. But the Conjuring 1 movie, Lorraine did consult on. And she consulted a little bit on Conjuring 2, but they relied on me a lot on Conjuring 2 also. And I'm here to say that the movies were very, very well made. The Conjuring 1, I would estimate to be about 80% true. Of course, you know, all movies take dramatic license. If you watched a autobiography about Abe Lincoln, it wouldn't be 100% true. There'd be stuff that was surmised, stuff that was made up for dramatic effect, like dialogues and conversations that may or may not have happened. But I can tell you this, that The Conjuring 1 was accurate as far as the phenomena that occurred, especially at the beginning. At the end, it got a little bit away from us when it had Carolyn Perron levitating in that chair. That did not happen, and spinning around with a sheet over her head. That wasn't correct. But everything else basically was. Lorraine felt a lot of evil at home. Now, I met Andrea Perron from the house. There was Roger, Carolyn, the mother and father, and 5 daughters, and one was Andrea Perron. If you want to know more about that case, I mean, really delve into it, you should read the books House of Darkness, House of Light by Andrea Perron. She has 3 volumes out. I suggest that you would pick those up if you want to know all about that haunting in Harrisville, Rhode Island. Ed used to tell me, we used to do lectures. After every lecture almost, he'd look at me and say, hey, you know what would make a great movie? And it was kind of ironic. He would say, you know what would make a great movie, Tom? I said, what? He says, that Bewitched farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island. And I say, you mean the Perron family? He goes, yeah, the Perron farmhouse. Harrisville, Rhode Island. That would make a great movie. Lo and behold, in 2009, Lorraine was approached by someone who had heard of the case, and the rest is history, as they say. But unfortunately, like I said, Ed couldn't be here to see it happen. But it's a great movie. The house really was haunted, and those girls went through a lot of torment in that house. The Conjuring 2 was based on the Enfield poltergeist in Enfield, England. And that happened in 1977. People were called in from the British Society for Psychical Research. Maurice Grosse, Guy Playfair were there for about a year. And Ed and Lorraine went there for a short period of time. People say they were never there. Ed and Lorraine were there. I have recordings of the actual spirit voices that emanated from thin air when they spoke and conversed with Ed. And, you know, Ed used to say that phenomenon was so unique and so rare. In other words, a spirit communicating with you in thin air, but having a conversation with you, not just calling out a name. Ed would say, you know, who are you? What are you? And it would answer. It would say, Fred, my name's Fred, in a deep guttural voice. And it would say, Fred, okay, Fred, are you a Christian? And Fred would answer, clear. He would answer, no. And it said, well, what are you then? And it said, soldier. The voice said, soldier. And it said, well, aren't soldiers Christians? And then you'd hear a big growl after that. I have those tapes, those audio tapes, and who knows, maybe someday I'll put them on YouTube for you guys to hear them. They're pretty rare. And Ed used to say to me all the time, you know, there's only 2 other cases that he was aware of that had those voices that issue from thin air and converse with the human being. He said it was the talking mongoose on the Isle of Man and the Tennessee Bell Witch. So you can read about those two also. But The Conjuring 2 is real. These girls, Janet and Margaret, would levitate off their beds, crisscross in the air. They had twin beds on each side of the bedroom, crisscross on the air and land on opposite beds. And I believe it was Margaret that dematerialized for 17 and a half minutes in that house. And they couldn't find her. Then they heard banging sounds coming from a little electrical box. You know, in England, in the UK, they have these electrical boxes on these council houses that keeps the meters for the gas and for the water usage and everything. It's just a little box, maybe, 1.5, 2 feet wide by the same depth. They heard a banging and a yelling sound. Lo and behold, when they opened up that box, it was Margaret inside there, crunched in like a fetal position. Later on, they tried to replicate it, try to have Margaret go back into the box, the meter box, and she couldn't. There's no way that a human being could contort themselves that way. Voices would issue from around the girls. Maurice Grosse did a lot of tests to see if they knew how to be ventriloquists, and they didn't. And the voices were deep, guttural sounds that if anyone did that for any length of time, it would ruin your vocal cords. And that's even according to Maurice Grosse. But when Ed and Lorraine were there, they witnessed a lot of phenomena. Wallpaper coming off the walls, putrid odors, excrement, human excrement just appearing in front of them on the floor, on the carpet. The voices, which were the most amazing phenomena going, the voices of Fred, Tommy, a lot of different names that they would use. So that case in itself was really, really legitimate, and it was really scary, to say the least. Now, we get to the Annabelle movies now. As you know, Annabelle is a real Raggedy Ann doll, not a porcelain doll like you see in the movies. But James Wan felt that it was important to have a creepy-looking, scary puppet. In fact, James Wan's hashtag is creepy puppet on Twitter. He loves creepy puppets. Now, James Wan, the young man, right now he's probably 41, maybe 42 years old, I don't know. But when I met him, he was 36, 37. And I gotta say, he's brilliant. A brilliant person, creativity-wise and directorial-wise, and personality-wise. His personality is beautiful. As was Patrick Wilson's personality when I saw him on a Conjuring 1 and Conjuring 2 and Vera Farmiga. I couldn't believe that they were that down to earth, to be able to talk to people that weren't famous like me and be down to earth and treat me like I was somebody special, which it was amazing. In fact, when I went to the first filming of Conjuring 1, it was in North Carolina, in Wilmington, beautiful studios, MGM. When I went in there with Lorraine, I was a little nervous. I knew they were going to treat Lorraine like a celebrity. But I said, I'm just going to be tagging along. Are they just going to ignore me and think I'm a pain in the neck by hanging around? So I walk into the video village where they're taping on the Conjuring 1 filming, and I see a director's chair. It says Lorraine Warren on the back of it. And I look over at another director's chair. It says Tony Spera, which blew my mind. That was me. It blew my mind that they thought enough to make up a director's chair with my name on it. So I was quite impressed with Warner Brothers New Line Cinema, with a lot of people there. Walter Hamada, he was fantastic. Peter Safran, fantastic. Rob Cowan, they're all great people. And I met Ron Livingston, who's from Band of Brothers and from Office Space, and he was the most polite guy you'd ever want to meet. The most polite person. I went up to him and I said, I saw you in the Office Space. I said, I couldn't stop laughing. And I said, it was just one of the most funniest movies I've ever seen. He just looked at me and he said, thank you so much for those kind words. And he said it genuinely. And Vera treated me well. She saw me standing in the middle of the foyer area on the set of that house that they built to be the Conjuring house inside the studio. It was like a $500,000 structure that they built, a whole working house, electricity and everything. And in the morning, she saw me standing there when she arrived on set. I looked like a lost puppy. And she immediately grabbed the camera out of my hand and said, let's take a photo together. And she handed the camera to someone and says, can you take our picture? And she took several pictures with me. Now, really, who am I, you know? She doesn't really know me, but she knew that I was Lorraine's son-in-law. She treated me with total respect and politeness. And Patrick, he's a man's man. He's a guy's guy. He's just a regular person all the way. You know, you look at these celebrities on screen, you think that they're untouchable, that you can't approach them. That's not true. You can really approach these people. So it was a fantastic experience. And there was a stunt coordinator on set. His name was Joel, big guy. And I started to be friendly with Joel, and so did Lorraine. And it turns out that Joel was Arnold Schwarzenegger's double in all of his big movies like Terminator and Eraser, I believe, and some other ones that he did. I can't even remember all the names, but they were like the jungle movies and things. He was in a jungle, and he did most of the stunts for Arnold. And Arnold took, of course, all the credit for being the action hero, but Joel was the guy. So, getting back to the Annabelle movies were not really based on truism. They were kind of made up almost all the way, except for the last movie. Now, Annabelle 1, Annabelle 2 were kind of a creation of the writers. They used the name Annabelle, and they used that it was a doll. Other than that, the story was kind of, let's just say, a lot of dramatic license taken. Annabelle Comes Home, however, though, was a lot closer to reality, especially at the beginning of the movie, because in reality, Ed Warren and Lorraine Warren did go to these nurses' house, did talk to them, and did decide to take the doll back with them. And they did, and placed it in the museum. And on the way home, Ed had a problem with the car. Now, it wasn't the same as in the movies, but he had trouble maneuvering the car, and the car was stalling out and jerking around on him, too. And it wasn't like that before they picked the doll up. So, and just the way they portrayed Ed and Lorraine in all of the movies, including Annabelle Comes Home, was fantastic. And Patrick Wilson did all the singing in that Conjuring 2, and he sang Can't Help Falling in Love, which amazingly, I never said anything to the producers or anything, or anybody there, but Elvis was a big part of my early life when I was growing up, and that was one of my favorites was Can't Help Falling in Love, because it was such a nice romantic love song from Blue Hawaii. And it's amazing that there's some kind of synchronicity going on here. If you watch Annabelle Comes Home, you'll see some record albums, and some of you young kids don't even know what they are maybe, but they're vinyl discs, and there's grooves in the discs, and you put it on a turntable and you play music. And these albums were scattered slightly. You only see the albums on the table in Annabelle Comes Home for about 5 seconds, if that. But I, with my unique set of eyes, I'm a big Beach Boy fan. I love the Beach Boys. I loved Elvis when I was a kid. I still love Elvis. But when I heard the first song of the Beach Boys, Surfin' Safari, I fell in love with their harmonies. And I know the Beach Boys albums backwards, forwards, upside down. And in that group of groupings was Endless Summer album, the Beach Boys' Endless Summer. I spotted it. I bet you nobody else spotted it of the millions of people who watched the movie but me, that the Endless Summer album was on there. So it's kind of weird. Also, when Daniela walks out and sees the coins that are rolling on the floor, the flooring was made out of linoleum. That linoleum floor was in my house that I owned previously to the one I moved into. Nobody would have known that. We didn't tell anybody that. It was the exact same linoleum floor. There are a lot of synchronicities going on in some of these movies. And it's amazing also that there was a box. If you go and watch Annabelle Comes Home, there's a religious-looking box. It's a box that we carry on our cases when we try to do a blessing of a house on our own before we call a priest in. In that box is pontifical incense, blessed holy water, deliverance prayers, a rosary, a cross. And on top of the box, we have a wooden cross that's carved into the top of the box. The box is maybe twice the size of a shoebox, maybe, made out of wood. In Annabelle Comes Home, there's a box just like it that Ed Warren grabs for. We've never, ever divulged that box to anybody at Warner Brothers or New Line. How did they know there was a box like that? It's not on any internet photos anywhere that I know of. I don't tell people I carry that box when I go on investigations. There's things that occurred in that movie, in those movies, that it's like such a coincidence that it can't be a coincidence type of a thing. The Nun is not really based on any cases that Ed and Lorraine investigated. The closest that I could think of is the Borley Nun in Borley, England. There's a Borley Rectory and a Borley Church, and the Borley Rectory burned down, but years and years ago, maybe in the 16th, 17th, 18th century, I'm not sure, it was said that a nun was having an affair with a priest and was found out. And they took the nun and they walled her up into one of the concrete walls in the church. This is the story I heard. And they walled her up alive until she died. Talk about torture, huh? So that movie was not really based on any cases that Ed and Lorraine made. Ed was an artist. He used to do landscape art, haunted houses, New England's villages, such as, houses in New England area. The Oceanborn Mary House in Henniker, New Hampshire, which I have a YouTube video, I believe, on, or will have one on if I don't. But there's a lot of paintings here that Ed did. I have on my YouTube video, in the haunted passageway that leads to the museum here, there's paintings on both sides of the wall that Ed did. The movies were a big success, and there's also another movie coming out called The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. And that's going to be, I believe, released in September, but who knows with this pandemic going on if it's going to be released in September of 2020 or not. But I have to tell you that it's going to be a fantastic movie. The Devil Made Me Do It, based on a book and an actual case, of course, by Ed and Lorraine, called The Devil in Connecticut. And it was about a case in Brookfield, Connecticut that was really fantastic. And that is what this movie is going to be about. The Devil Made Me Do It. You should look it up. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to hit the subscribe button if you can. Hit the like button. Try not to hit the dislike button. It kind of hurts me when I see that. But I've had a lot of likes, some dislikes, which I'm sorry to get. But hey, I guess that's part of YouTube. But I'm going to keep on keeping on. I'm going to keep Lorraine's and Ed's legacy alive as long as I possibly can, because I know they were the real deal. I worked with them since the mid-'80s. They were the real deal. They never charged for an investigation at all. In other words, if someone called them up from 200, 300, 400 miles away and they needed help, and Ed decided that that family really needed their help in person, he would drive there with Lorraine and not charge the family a dime. In fact, sometimes they'd be in a house for 2 or 3 days and not even get a cup of coffee from the family, and not ask either. They'd go out for lunch, they'd come back. Go out for dinner, come back. So people say they're in it for the money. They really don't know what the hell they're talking about. Later on, after all those years of working, you know how I hear about overnight successes in music? And the guy was working in the nightclubs, making pennies for years, and then all of a sudden he gets a hit song, and now they think it's an overnight sensation. That person wasn't always a guy with money. Neither were Ed and Lorraine. They were broke for a long time, and they never became millionaires. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to keep their legacy alive, and with you guys' help, with your help watching these videos, you'll make that a reality too. So for now, it's Tony Spera signing off. Have a good day, and stay